Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello and welcome back to you all from the listening in the world, also to the ears. This is also Shiny Set Out from Dave and Mackie to you. Welcome. Thank you. And with that, we are going to step right into the prophecy. Because we never talked about prophecy before, Dave. We haven't talked about prophecy. We avoided it. Not like the plague for 10 years, but it was a bit of a subject, I guess, that was maybe a little too esoteric. But I think we had to come to it, and we had other.
Yeah, when we say esoteric, this is it's the topic that we both felt as though it just kind of, there's been some good, people prophesizing. There we go, and
that's it.
And they've been right, but not always. And the thing that really got us recently about this was, and do tell me your point of view too, Mickey.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that they all seem to be pointed at the same point in time. From it doesn't matter whence they saw their prophecy and wrote it down. It's the now, I think, is the most important point. They all converge. They all have prophecies to do with now, not only those that have already come true in the past, but for the things that are really pertinent today.
Mm-hmm.
That's what shocked me, I think, the most.
Yeah.
Was 10 years ago, I did just like we complain that other people don't care or have any reaction to news stories that are happening somewhere else, or there's no impact to me. But now they seem to all have the impact. Oh my goodness. What do we do?
No, this is really the interesting thing here, right? So, and you're right. It seems to be converging up on this, not a specific date, but this particular point in time. And it's not so much governed by dates per se, right? But by events, things that are unfolding. That's really what the prophecies are talking about. And if you read some of these, specifically the American prophecies, I want to call them, both South Meso and North American native peoples prophecies, it's really quite disturbing to see all of these things having come to pass. The other prophecies as well, of course, mind you, but it is really a very sobering. It's a very sobering realization to see that different cultures, and we're talking about this goes across cultures, right? And funnily enough, this is really the kicker for me, Dave, when we talked about the Catholic prophecies, right? And the prophecies of the lines of popes, as you might recall.
Yeah.
We spoke quite a bit, and then having the papal lineage, right, come to an end with the current pope.
Yes.
So this is the prophecy from Saint Malachi about 1,000 years ago. We'll call it, thereabouts. Slightly less than 1,000 years ago, but we're not going to split numbers here. And he wrote this whole list of popes and what they're like, and we focused in on the last 10, I think, in our analysis. And right now we're living in the last in the last pope's time. Now, it's not saying the world is coming to an end. Paul St. Malachi says this is the last pope. This is the last pope, the 112th pope, in fact. And so this will be the end of the Catholic Church.
Go.
This will, right? I mean, will it? I'm not saying, all we can say for certain about that particular prophecy is that St. Malachi believed that the current pope would be the last pope. Because look, the Catholic Church has seen many turbulent times. There was a split of the Protestants. When Martin Luther nailed his thesis on the cathedral doors at Worms, he was quite unhappy with the way the church was going, and that sort of sparked the Reformation. And so you get the Protestant, and then you had the split of the Church of England because the king couldn't get a divorce. So fine, I'll tell you what, I'm the king. I'll make my own religion. and the Archbishop of Canterbury became the head of the Anglican Church, and there are other splits along the way. It's neither here nor there. But to say that this might be the final pope is a big thing, because there's like 1 billion Catholics in the world, right? And whatever occasions that would have to be a fairly significant world event, I would say. And then on top of that, like I said, we have the other prophecies here that come to us, especially the Hopi, Dave. I have to say, because the Hopi talk about the 9 signs and the different worlds and all the things that could be done to avoid a dire fate. So it's interesting, but this is really an interesting component here as well. So bear with me for a second. Science tells us we are living in a world that is based on quantum logic at the fundamental smallest parts, right? They sort of wash away if you go into the macro world, but ultimately we're living on quantum form, let's call it, okay? And what that means is we're living in a field of probabilities, okay? And all we can really perceive and see is this world. That's all we know about. That's every morning we wake up and here it is, right? For most of us, unless we have slippages. But here we are. This is the world. Good for us. What it does tell us, though, is it is about probabilities. I mean, every day you make a decision, and all of us do this. And every decision has certain knock-on effects that will go down certain paths and certain, like a decision tree, right? It sort of branches out. And with each decision, other decisions are becoming either more likely or less likely, right? So if you get married, then it's likely you have kids one day. Okay, once you've got kids, it's highly unlikely that you will never have kids because you have kids, right? So you will always have had those kids because you've made that decision. That's the decision. So that's the way. So whatever happens after that, it branches out from there, right? But maybe you didn't marry in another reality, right? And you didn't have kids, and so other decisions stem from that. So it's a field of probabilities. Now with the Hopis, it's very similar as well, which is really interesting because that's what modern science tells us. What the Hopi tell us, well, if you do these things, right? Like you shake hands and you work together and you trust each other and you respect each other, then you can avoid catastrophe, right? That's what they said. But in the past, as these prophecies unfolded, they found that the path, or the correct path, was not chosen. So catastrophe was in fact not avoided, but rather invited, right? And now we are again at a crossroads, coming up to one very soon, and this is around the space station, right? So in 2031, the International Space Station, which launched in 2000, it will plunge into the waters of Point Nemo, right? Which is in the Southern Pacific Ocean. Doesn't matter, but that's what the Hopi said. The Hopi said a dwelling place in the heavens would crash to Earth, thereby producing a brilliant blue star, the Sakwa Sohu. The blue star Kachina would remove his mask in the village plaza during a sacred Kachina dance. After that, all Hopi ceremonies would cease entirely. Right?
Wow.
Now, what does that mean? I don't know. It's the same thing as saying, what's the last pope? Well, okay, what does it mean the Hopis will no longer have any ceremonies? Will all the Hopis perish? Will the Hopis do a different thing? I don't know. My point is that that's what they said, right? And this is in the year 2031. Now, I don't think, well, actually, how old is the current pope? How old is the current pope?
Yeah, I'll Google it.
Yeah, so 85 years. He's 85.
Oh,
okay?
Good on you.
Pope, I'm fast, dude. I'm fastest fingers in the West. Pope Francis is 85 years old. Could he live to 2031? It's only 9 years.
Yeah, he could. You could do that.
So the answer is yes. Queen Elizabeth is 96. Joe Biden is 79.
I thought he was a million.
Pope, he's a million. He's a million if he's a day. The previous Pope Benedict, who was the first Pope to have ever resigned, as far as I know, is 95. He's not dead yet. He's 95 years old. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So could the current Pope live to the ripe old age of 94? The answer is yes. I think absolutely he could, especially with modern medicine, etc., etc., etc. Now, having said all of that, right? So these are prophecies from completely different cultures. They have, I mean, culture really have, I mean, nothing to do with each other on a fundamental level, right? And one is 1,000 years old, and one might be even older than that, the Hopi, for example. But there are others yet, which are also coming to pass now, right? And then Mother Shipton. Now the argument here is that some of the Mother Shipton prophecies were hoaxes.
I love this.
Forged.
I love.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But so she was meant to have lived in the 17th century. So let's call it in the 1600s, 1650, 1660, whatever.
Sure.
So that's what they say when the prophecies were meant to have been made. Oh no, not true. They say. What? Not true. Oh, okay. Well, sorry, 15 in the 1500s. Sorry, my mistake. 1550s, 1540s. Wrong. Oh, sorry. Okay, so what is this? Okay, then, right. They were made in 1873. Some 200, 300 years later, right? By Mr. Charles Hindley. So he made those prophecies. Not in fact Mother Shipton some 300 years or so earlier. Oh,
Hoax.
now, let's be very clear here. That's still 250 years
ago.
Sorry, 200. No, 100, 140, 180. So 160, 170 years before the present time.
So that's still 170 years ago, and it's still right.
Yeah,
whether they're hoax or not.
Yeah, and the things if he hoaxed it, the things he said are astounding. And I'm thinking, because the thing is, this was made before women were allowed to vote. This was made before, in fact, emancipation of the slaves had just happened in the States, right? This was a couple of years after the Civil War, and the automobile had not been invented yet. Okay, and we don't have heavier than air flight either. That's another 15 years away, right? And on it goes. Yet he has made those predictions, and love shall die and marriage cease, and babies and sucklings so decrease that wives shall fondle cats and dogs, and men live much the same as hogs. Woman shall get a strange old craze to dress like men and breeches are pants, and cut off their beautiful locks of hair, and ride astride with brazen brow as witches do on broomsticks. Now,
well, that's what's happening now.
I mean, yeah, but this
LGBTQ, Mickey.
Yes. No, it's an incredible insight, right? Even for 1873, an incredible insight, right? Now, okay, be that as it may, but it does point to the time period we're all alive in, right? When I was young, I went to fortune tellers, not on a regular basis, but I went a couple of times, right? And by fortune tellers, I mean, self-proclaimed psychics, and some were pretty accurate, I gotta say. And I didn't give anything away, so everything they gave me was they had to figure it out themselves, right? And again, like I told you before, in my family, it runs fairly deep. With my grandmother especially, I have a small gift myself. But the point is, what they said is, generally speaking, most of them said, well, we're living in a special time where people chose to be born here to help or witness or whatever. Right now, this is the time, and for the last 50 years, obviously for myself and for most of you out here as well, and for the next 40, 50 years going forward, this is a very special time in many ways. We are seeing the rate of change that we have not seen before. We're seeing natural cataclysms. We're seeing political upheavals. We're seeing the ending of old orders and the beginning of new orders. We're seeing chaos, and we're seeing it on a global scale. We're seeing the entire population of the world affected by things. And you could argue it started really in anger with World War II. World War I, while it was called a world war, was a fairly limited conflict. right? It really was. It was a fairly limited conflict. It didn't have this massive Pacific theater of war, right? With Japan involved, and Australia, and then Asia as well, and then all the way in Africa. World War II was a game changer. World War II was a truly global war. You had several theaters of war, right? And they were all as hot as the next one. In fact, the war in Europe ended before the war in Japan, or the war in the Pacific, right? And it took the dropping of 2 atomic bombs to end the war in the Pacific with Japan. So Victory Day in Europe came before Victory Day in the Pacific. And this was a truly global conflict. It was the first global conflict. I mean, we had big wars before then, and within the context of the civilizations that existed then, there were world wars, but they're not really, right? They were very limited, localized skirmishes. Even World War I, even though it was the death toll was horrific, right? Most of the people died in Europe, mostly in France, believe it or not, right? That's where most of the people died. There were some skirmishes elsewhere, but nothing really like World War II. So since World War II, in my opinion, we've entered this era of significant change, accelerated change. And I know, Dave, I don't know if you feel the same way, because I'm going to throw it over to you now. But people talk about they feel time is speeding up. Things are happening faster. How do you see this whole era we're living through?
Wow. I said this on the show the other day, that it is a good time to have been here to witness it. And I think that's the most important phrasing that I can put around it. Because, to give it some context, for me, I would have loved to have lived in the 50s. To have been mature enough in the 50s to be driving a motor vehicle, and possibly even in the US, right? That to me, with all of the post-war patriotism, the solid vision of the future, everyone in that kind of had found their place on the planet, yes. And just for a short while, everything that we believed was the right direction was what was occurring. Since then, I'm not sure. I'm not saying that I'm disappointed, as much maybe as saddened that we've kind of lost our way to the true direction we should be going in. Because since then, we've seen the huge uptick of the military-industrial complex, government within a government. There's sponsors now for politicians. That whole thing kind of fell away. I think everything that was right about it, I'm sure there's 100 things that were wrong, but everything that I think at the time then, that was when we all kind of believed the same picture was real. And since then, granted, there have been many successful changes, many things that rose and fell but should have stuck but didn't. And we had opportunities to go in any direction we wanted, but what we chose was to diversify and just go everywhere. I think maybe to our own demise. What I'm seeing in the physics world is actually this year will be the fastest spinning of the Earth that we've seen, ironically.
That's right.
We're at so from a speed perspective, our Earth is spinning minus 200 and something milliseconds faster than it should, which is the most that since we had atomic clocks that we've noticed, which is really bizarre. Because remember, before we were adding time to it, so we had a leap second. Remember?
Yeah, I do.
We had a leap year with a leap second. Just add that on, because that'll fix all the clocks, right? Well, now we're going to have to take away time that we added back then. So the only way to make a solid thing like the Earth spin faster is for like an ice skater spinning. You've got to bring your arms in.
Yeah, that's yes. Centrifugal
It's
force.
the same mass,
Yes.
but it's closer to the point of rotation. Therefore, it has more energy or more centrifugal motion. It's centripetal motion, to be honest. But anyway, so the angular momentum increases as the mass comes towards the center. And how do we explain that? I don't know.
I don't have to.
Well, I mean, from science's perspective, they're still unwilling to say how that is at all possible. But anyway, good luck. I don't get it myself. I can postulate a whole bunch of things, but until they've got a peer review, listen to me, waiting for a peer reviewed output of something. I swear, we're living in an alternate universe where those words came out of my mouth. But yeah, so from the words "the quickening" was something that keeps coming to mind, and everyone's saying, not just adults whose day just flies by for no reason whatsoever, but even kids. Kids are saying, "Where'd the time go? I don't understand." I remember being bored every second, like Britney Spears' opening video clip to, what was it? Oops, I Did It Again? No, whatever it was. Where she's at school with the pencil, watching the clock tick, and it doesn't seem to be moving at all. I remember being a kid, and every single second was like an eternity.
My Sundays, my summer days, I should say. Excuse me. My summer days stretched on endlessly. Bike riding in the fields. No, seriously.
Yeah.
You would. I mean, you would get up early, go out there, ride your bike, and do things with your friends in the world. And they would just stretch on and on and on. Sometimes you rush home because there might be an afternoon kids movie that you wanted to catch or whatever.
Oh,
it might be, right?
I remember that. School holidays, yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. And
we used to explore the underground world of freshwater runoff pipes.
Oh, that's cool. We had World War II bunkers up in the forest.
Oh, my goodness.
So we also had my area in Germany, where I lived in Cologne or Spich.
Yeah.
Actually, Spich itself had the last occupational military encampment of the World War II Allied powers, the Belgians, in fact.
Oh, wow.
They were encamped. Yeah, no, they had a whole area. I mean, half of Spich, I guess, was Belgian barracks, really.
Yeah.
And my grandfather would go down and drink in the Belgian pubs, which was just across the road from him, because he spoke French, obviously. And
clearly.
They used to call him Monsieur. Oh, my grandfather spoke 5 languages. But the point is that you just out there at a time would just be such an unlimited resource. It would be abundantly available to us, and I hope my kids feel the same way. I don't know if they do or not, but I certainly do not. Even on holidays, even if I don't have to look after the kids for the day.
Yeah,
time seems to operate on a different scale. It's really interesting, and certainly, I really feel that we are living in a time where things are starting to go sideways in a major way. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that's happened, don't get me wrong, but overall, in a major way, and not just human stuff, not just stuff that we do, right? Like having billionaires or societies or politics or wars, but natural things as well, as we can see here. And I'm not talking about human-induced climate change, but volcanism. We had the largest volcanic explosion recently that we have ever had in recent times, right? In underwater volcano. Boom, right?
That's Tonga, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean other things as well. I mean, and disasters and again, not just weather events, right? Earthquakes are on the rise, massive earthquakes.
Oh, but guess what, Mackie? Guess what the argument is against that seemingly increased amount is that there's more humans and we spread across the globe, so someone's going to feel it. That's what I keep hearing from the naysayers.
Yeah.
And I go, well,
And
you're
look,
right, but those two
yes.
things aren't combined. They're
Yes,
not
correct.
a cause and effect situation that you seem to have dreamt up.
The truth is, there are more people on the planet, so therefore we can expect more people to be affected. But I'm not just talking about people being affected. I'm talking about the natural world being affected. Because you can't say, oh, there are more koalas now, that's why so many burned to death during the bushfires in Australia. That's nonsense.
Jeez.
Okay? I mean, but that's a nonsense argument. I mean, we've had more fires in the world than ever before that we know of.
That's right.
And I mean, everything was on fire last year.
That's right.
And actually, for the last 2 years, everything was on fire everywhere.
That's
and
right.
this is not hyperbole talking either, right? And if it wasn't on fire, it was blown away or washed away.
It was underwater. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And then we're talking about, seriously, we're talking about climate refugees now. We're talking about new diseases that are popping up. And in fact, the problem that we're seeing now with the defrosting of the permafrost, right? The frozen tundra in large areas of the world, especially the northern hemisphere, right? We're seeing microorganisms come to life that haven't been around for, potentially, certainly thousands, if not tens of thousands. Yeah. And that's a long, long time to be not exposed to something. I mean, from a human perspective, look what happened to the Native Americans when the Europeans came and gave them, smallpox blankets. There you go, that's problem solved. I mean, it's the same thing happened in Sydney as well. The Sydney Aboriginals, certainly, specifically Sydney Aboriginals, they had a massive dying of European diseases. And so these diseases are diseases that we have no antibodies for.
That's right.
Right? And once they're out in the wild, they're out in the wild. That's it. I mean, more people are killed by mosquitoes than almost any other thing in the world. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Mosquitoes kill more people. Of course, they don't kill you. The diseases that they transmit, like malaria, is what kills you.
That's right.
But it's a thing. That's, maybe not in first world nations, but all around in smaller and not smaller, but poorer countries. Absolutely, that's true.
And why are they poorer and living through this, and we're not dealing with it? Because
they're the wrong color, and because look, I'm not going to blame colonialism, because the human race has always been like this. And slavery is not a black and white thing. It's not. Slavery is a human thing. Okay, let's be very clear. Has the British Empire, the Spanish Empire, the Dutch, the Belgians, the Germans, the French, etc., the Italians, have they covered themselves?
Even the Japanese, Mackie.
Even the Japanese. Yeah. Have they? No. Chinese too. The Chinese. So the Chinese and the Russians are practicing.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to bring up China, but yes.
Oh no, but it's true. But it's continental colonialism. That's what they continental. What we do in Europe, or have done in Europe, and Japan to some extent, we practice a satellite colonialism. Right?
That's
so
right.
We go places and then we just stay there and build up. Whereas China and Russia specifically, China and Russia, they expand. That's what China and Russia just expand outward. They're not really into satellite colonialism. They're into continental colonialism. Just to give you a couple of terms you might not have heard before. But it's a human condition. I'm not blaming anyone. But we have raped and pillaged the African continent in this iteration of history. We have. And same with South America. We've raped and pillaged it to the max. We've taken it all away, and now we're talking about repatriating everything. Yeah, sure, good luck with that. But I mean, the reason that these countries are in the state that they're in,
there won't be anyone left, mate, to repatriate anything.
Yeah, but this is not the fault of the people in those countries. Not entirely.
Right? There was never a time where they were going to win the colonization argument.
No,
that's right.
And could things have been different? Well, yes, it could have. But see, when the colonial powers left, in some cases they left sooner or not at all. But the point is, they left behind certain institutions and a certain way of life, which lent itself to corruption and cronyism, nepotism, and so that's why a lot of these countries still are in the quagmire they found themselves in after colonialism, or at least officially ended. It is. These institutions were set up. I mean, the conflict in Rwanda. You know what sparked the conflict in Rwanda back in the where 600,000 people were hacked to death? The British. Yeah, the Houthis. Sorry, the Hutus and the Tutsis. Hutus and Tutsis, right? Two tribal elements in Rwanda. So two different tribes. Africans. They're all Africans. They're black. Okay, but one tribe, generally speaking, is taller than the other tribe. That's the distinguishing feature. And names and language is different, but certainly physical height. Not as a general, like not for everybody, but as a general thing, yes. Right. So what the British did, they encouraged the separation or the segregation between these two and favored one group over the other. I can't remember which one now. I don't want to lie to you. I can't remember which group was favored. But this conflict might not have been created by the British, but they certainly exacerbated the problem. We will help these people, we won't help those people, and so it was like a favoritism kind of thing, right? And before you know it, it ended in the genocidal rage that lasted for 6 weeks and killed 600,000 people, maybe more. 600,000 people hacked to death. The Germans didn't accomplish this in that time frame.
Wow.
The Germans were very efficient, right? 6 weeks. The Germans didn't manage to do that in 6 weeks. They just couldn't. Whereas armed mobs of rampaging Rwandans managed to kill 600,000 people in 6 weeks. 6 weeks.
So I want to just mention something here about the history books, about the winners changing the history books. Now we all know what happens. Even we did it in World War II. We said things. We skipped over some things that weren't necessary, to document. But that's called still changing history, because you miss the little relevant things that the opposition might have known that we didn't know as when we read the history books. However, something really interesting, Becky, I want to just mention that Hong Kong has now been said by the new textbooks that are being revamped in liberal studies subject in secondary schools in China now state that Hong Kong was not a British colony.
Is that right?
Yeah. As the Chinese government did not recognize the unequal treaties that ceded the city to Britain, the Post has learned. So, yeah, it's something I had to kind of meld those two things together, because I don't want to just openly say that, but that's how you can change history.
Oh, yeah, clearly.
You just changed it in history books. Doesn't matter.
No, it never happened.
No.
What? No. What? No.
Nope.
Really? No.
No.
So no.
We don't talk about that anymore.
Oh.
That's right. It was never a thing.
What about no? Well, this is interesting. I had no idea, but I can see it. Absolutely, I can see that. I mean, happening. That is.
Well, this is the brave new world where all you have to do is change history.
Yeah.
In whatever definition you want, it doesn't really matter anymore, right?
Yeah.
Putin, looking at the current affairs, Putin is interested in bringing back the old days of the empire, right?
Yes, he is.
That's all he's trying to do. It's harmless, surely, right? Unless you're Ukrainian.
What could be the harm in that?
That's right. All of the killing, little bit killing.
Little bit killing, not much killing, little bit killing. Okay.
Right. So yeah. Well, that will one day be. The lands. If you play that all the way through to the end, the history books would never declare that it was its own sovereign democracy at any point. They'd just delete it. Skip past that. What do you need your resume for, Putin? Oh, no reason. Just updating the textbooks. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I got a board that I've got to join. Popsicle Toes seems to be impressing upon us that Art Bell is a passe. Is so passe, maybe.
Really?
I'm not quite sure, but I do still like listening to him, and may he rest in peace.
I do like Art. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I do like Art Bell quite a bit, in fact.
Yeah. Anyway, look. So, as from the prophecy perspective, Mickey, what's next?
Well, see, that's the thing, though, right? We've seen what could come our way, and I go back to what we said earlier around none of this is written in stone, and this is really important to understand.
That's what the Hopi said.
That's what the Hopi said. That's
Mhm.
correct. So what does it mean then, right? What it means is that we can still be different. We can still do things to prevent catastrophe. So we don't have to go down that path of destruction, as it were, right? We can choose a different path. Shake the hand rather than hit the hand, as it were. I mean, I hope you put it that way, or thereabouts.
What's really going to bake you noodle is if would the vase have been broken if I didn't tell you about it.
That's right. So, and quoting the Matrix, the Oracle, in fact, at this point, is probably a good thing, because there is such a concept as self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Of course there are. I mean, you act a certain way, and then the notion is that well maybe this is happening because you expected it to happen. You know what I'm saying here?
Mm-hmm.
Is it happening because you thought, okay, well, yeah, it made sense that it should happen,
As in a natural occurrence.
Yeah,
These
completely.
preceding things happen, and I would estimate that this would happen next. And look, there it is.
Yeah. Before you know it, there we are, right, as it were. But I don't know.
But is
that
the case? Certainly not in the 1700s, Mecky.
Well, no, but see,
not when you count popes either.
Yeah, but as we are moving into what has now become highly contested ground from a quantum perspective, as far as what will happen, what will not happen is concerned, like as far as prophecy is concerned, and it is highly contested. Make no mistake. What can we expect? I mean, what should we do, in fact, in order to not have it happen as it were? What do we need to do in order to avoid catastrophe? What do we need to do? And I don't have a good answer, I'm afraid. What could we do? I don't know. I really don't know. It's try not to give into fear and uncertainty is what I would say. Because fear and uncertainty, you know what they do, Dave? They really create a very, very fluctuating quantum field of probabilities. Fear, uncertainty. Because people can be pushed in directions they're more easily directed, right?
By using those tools.
And we will be directed into a position that is most favorable, obviously, to those that have an agenda. So you and I, and most of us, we don't really have an agenda spanning millennia. We don't. It's just not who we are. But there are those entities out there, and I'm using the word advisedly, that have millennia and even longer spanning agendas, right? And this is where it gets really hard. This is where most people just leave the boat. They go, I can't take it. It's too much. I can't take it. What do you mean by that, Nick? Millennia? Nobody lives that long. Well, what if I told you there are creatures out there, in my opinion, that have lived more than millions and millions of years? Because it's arbitrary. The way we keep time is completely arbitrary. Right? We have a ball of mud and rock spinning around a sun somewhere in the outer arms of a galaxy somewhere, and we call that a year. We call that a year. And how many of those do we live? 100, if we're lucky. We live 100 of those. By whose decree?
Well, it was the Anunnaki that decreed how long.
Yes. Look, and that's right. But
the answer was arbitrary.
Yeah, it's completely arbitrary. A year happens to be 365 of our days. There's no universal truth to our timekeeping. There's no universal truth to the way we measure age. It is just completely arbitrary, okay? And because it is.
And why is age counted by the revolutions around the sun?
Yeah. And we've got a certain biology, right? And now we're figuring out more and more about our biology, and we realize, maybe we don't have to die when we do die.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at some people, and we shared this with you, if people are born of parents with stress that live stressful life, their telomeres are shorter than people who had less stressful. Right? I mean, you look at the royal family; they all live well into their 90s, and not just bedridden 90s. They're still serviceable. By that I mean they're still out there doing stuff, right? It's not like they're decrepit. They're
God
still
save
active.
the Queen.
Well, but
The fascist regime.
like bees and ants to some extent, we have bred superior genetic classes.
Yeah.
I mean that's the 19th century British colonials. I can't really see it.
Well, you need a bit of a buffer, Mickey.
Pubescent dream. It's their dream. Oh, look at that! Oh yeah, look at us. We did it. We did it. Yeah, you did. You did do it. Look at you doing things. Huh? How good is that? And yeah, but it is really quite the accomplishment, I have to say.
I mean, I'm gonna put this stupid idea out there. Right? With all the prophecies we've read, the last pope, blah blah blah, end of the world, blah blah. The third shaking, blah blah.
Yeah.
All of the things that are there that we're staring at, which are due soon, and then we look at the physics side of the planetary science side, and there's meteors and all sorts of things can take your life real quick, and then you look at the what the current industry is doing, and industry is attempting to get us to Mars, with the agreement of the governments, trying to get us to Mars as quickly as possible, for some reason. Right? Oh, I know. There's plenty of reasons why we go. Well, can you name a few? Oh, maybe the possibility of nuclear war, maybe a meteor impact or something like that. Virus could take us all out. We need to diversify, to lower our risk. Absolutely, 100% agree with you in lowering the risk. And who's going to go? Who's going to go and escape the AI over there and escape the money system and build, nirvana to a certain extent? Yeah. Hopefully, we don't encounter any microbes that we've never encountered ever before in a human history, and it just wipes them all out. We get there's just a whole bunch of skeletons when we finally get back to there, wondering because history's rewritten. And we don't ever know about this, flight to Mars, and we just find a whole bunch of, decrepit and ancient structures on Mars. And because it wasn't in history books anymore, it's gone. We kind of deleted it, and then we wonder about who are these people.
Yeah.
Right now, with all this crazy going on, and governments clearly read in, and I say this with the premise that all of the legalizing of drugs around the world, and certainly in the large, extending that out to the US, which isn't the whole world, but within itself is. In Australia, we have decriminalisation of certain drugs, but now just recently, on the 9th of June, the Canberran, that's where the politicians live and organise, they've agreed to decriminalise small amounts of illicit drugs. And I thought, wow, what does illicit turn into? And that's ice, heroin, and cocaine. Hang on a minute.
Ice?
Yes.
What?
Yes. I threw you a news story about this.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
and that's the ABC's website. Yeah,
it's just insane.
And users of small amounts of illegal drugs would be fined rather than charged under proposed law. Fined, that means it doesn't really go on your record. And police would continue to target dealers and try to end the supply of harmful drugs. Blah, blah, blah. The ACT also legalized the personal use of cannabis back in 2019. So my argument is what they should do to control this rather is just have big pharma make it and make it safe, not in the backyards, cooking
absolutely.
it up in a shed, and you know what I mean.
No,
If
no,
they're
I'm
going to
with you,
do it,
100%.
if they're going to do it, just do it. I don't care. Just do it. What I care about is the health and safety of the children who are going to make their last choice to try it, and it's the wrong choice because of the quality of the drugs. And that's really a shame. That would be a shame for someone who, was a bright spark and who had, been taught to make informed decisions, and then they try to make an informed decision, which all teenagers do against your will anyway, and advice. They don't get your advice. And they've got to learn for themselves, and they're going to do it. So wouldn't it not be safer if they were in fact made by Big Pharma? And that's where I stand on it, because I think the safety of the children's lives is more important. But the money that they would make, my goodness. But my point isn't that they're legalizing the drugs. My point rather is that what's the government know that they've not told us? Where they're just letting us all get about our business and start, opening up those closed doors, opening up the gates, letting all of us kind of run free on the surface. You know where I'm going there. No, you don't. So
I do. I do.
Yeah, so letting us all run free on the surface, while when the impending doom arrives, if they're ready and they know, and this is all a dog and pony show that we're seeing, that they go to their bunkers and we're just the surface dwellers, left to live out our lives. And in this way, we don't argue. In this way, we don't question. In this way, we just accept it. And, hey, woohoo, look, these things are now legalized or decriminalized in this case.
Look, that's very interesting. That's an interesting perspective, and well worth thinking about, to be honest with you. Simply because, well, we're living through it now. It's actually really odd that this would happen at this particular time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're right. What is the agenda here? What are they trying to do?
Why do they need us so compliant?
Yeah.
And that we're all off our faces, right? Just happy to take the edge off life with something. Yep.
Yeah. Is this the advent of Soma? Is this,
yes.
in Brave New World, everybody took this drug called Soma.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Is this what this is? Is this where we are seeing, I guess the eventual drugging of everybody? I mean, they've been trying for a long time. Anyway, is this now a much more concerted effort to make it happen? Maybe.
Mickey, with the coronavirus, and they did all the sewage testing to look for where it was, to identify the new towns that had coronavirus, because it was evident. It turned up in the poop, right?
Yeah.
What they discovered was the illicit drug use as well, because hey, while we're testing them for the poop, let's look for for ice, and let's look for heroin, and let's look for cocaine. Wow, it's everywhere, right? Yeah. It's more prevalent than you were led to believe, and according to the police chief, who would through any town anywhere in the world, the police chief would be touting the successes of all of their agency's programs to curb the drugs.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that about any particular police inspector or head of police anywhere, because I don't want to get in trouble for anything. But they would be touting success. But then the coronavirus really showed where all the failings were. It's kind of like putting a sniffer on the network to look where all the bad packets are coming from, only to discover that they're already owned by a foreign agency. That would be very funny.
Well, look, and so where does it leave us? I mean, I know it's only about 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, well, 6.
Here, 6 minutes, okay. But let's just think for a second where we are now, what it means for all of us. What it means is space-time, as we understand it, clearly isn't the way we understand it at all, because some people seem to be able to get a glimpse into possible futures. And it is really telling that some of the most successful TV shows and movies, and highest grossing movies of all time, in fact, are dealing with multiversal issues.
Yes.
Doctor Strange, Stranger Things,
Yep.
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Mhm.
That's a recent one as well. Spider-Verse or Spider-Man No Way Home or whatever it's called.
Sure.
Also a multiversal thing. So the multiverse theme is very popular in science fiction as well, and in writing, in movies, etc. But it's come into mainstream significantly, right? Did something happen with the Hadron Collider?
I
Who
reckon.
knows? Possibly. Yeah, look, I would say yes, but again, what do I know?
Mandela effect started happening when it was turned on.
Look, there is that, right? I mean, there are certain things here, right, that we have to consider, and we are now at a crossroads, and have been for some time now, and we're making all the wrong decisions, by the way, along the way. We're making all the wrong decisions. We're driven by selfishness. I had a discussion last night with a friend over dinner, and I said, I said, it's really interesting. Europeans, or mostly Europeans, but let's call it the Western civilization, are driven by the self, by ego. And that started with the Age of Reason and René Descartes. I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. Right? So me, right?
Not we think, therefore we are.
No, not at all. And this has been a common feature in European philosophy as well, where the individual becomes the focal point, right? Whereas in Eastern religion, in Eastern philosophy, I should say, not religion, Confucianism, for example, right? The individual is completely meaningless unless it's in the context of the greater good or the greater community, right? The Chinese go with their last name first, right? So Smith John or Danger Dave would be, that's how you introduce yourself. And so it's fundamentally different outlook overall. So we're not well equipped to deal with challenges on that level when it comes to community, necessity, etc. We are focused on the individual only. And because we are where we are, and because we have certain decisions to make, we make those decisions based from an individual point of view. That's what billionaires are, the ultimate expression of egocentric civilizations. Kings, queens, billionaires. As far as I'm concerned, they're all the same, right? It's the ultimate expression of what is wrong with our civilization. But we encourage it. That's what we encourage. We encourage this idea of the individual being, somehow better than the group. Whereas, in Eastern tradition and philosophy, that's the opposite. Very interesting mindset. And what we see here then, we all make these decisions not based on the common good, but based on what's good for me. So the point I'm trying to make here is all these decisions that we could make that could lead us away from catastrophe, right? Leading us further into catastrophe because we're making them from our point of view, from our individual point of view. We don't think about the world, the greater good. Who cares? Are you crazy? Me, what does it do for me? What is good for me? Right? Or if we're generous, my family, maybe. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe my family. I'll give you that. But see all these nexus points, and again, especially not just the North American indigenous people, but South American, African, even Australian Aboriginals or indigenous people are talking about community. They're talking about communities. They're not talking about individuals. They're talking about communities, right? And that is the critical difference between their view on the world and, in general, our view of the world. We just don't think like that. We think in terms of what is good for me, not how can I make my community better? Yeah, who cares? How can I make myself better? And of course, in the long term, that's a catastrophic view of the world. You can't sustain yourself by only thinking about yourself because you need other people in your civilization to sustain yourself. And you can't always be downtrodden at the bottom of the barrel. They can't. They need to have hope as well. They need to have something, right, to live for. If they don't have that, Well, let me tell you, you're screwed. As a civilization, you are screwed. You got nothing. Is that what you want? I suspect not, but that's where we are, right? So, what do? We have to start thinking differently, guys and girls. We can no longer just look, if it's good for me, it's good for the planet. Yeah, no, that's not the thing. That is not a thing. I'm afraid it just isn't. So Dave, I don't know. I don't know what we can. I don't know what the lesson here is. I think the lesson is we need to change the way we think.
I agree. And you know what? There's the bumper.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I know. It flew through again. This has been David Mackey's Shiny Side Out, episode 535. Up next is Jer Bear with his awesome show After Hours. Do tune in and become part of his show. Talk to him, dial in. Anyway, in the meantime, catch us during the week on Plato's Cave. We'll see you there. Oh, Bill Johnson's legal show is coming up. I was wrong.